I saw two comments on a post last week that together explain why this conversation is so hard. A Western man said, Western women have become so entitled. Then a Filipina replied about some Western men here in the Philippines. They have the money, so they think they can dictate the rules. Now, that is not the usual Filipina take on Western men, which is why it stopped me. It reads less like an opinion and more like a scar, like someone who already experienced the things this episode is talking about. Hold on to her because we'll come back to her later. Now, both comments are incomplete, but both are pointing at something real. And the felt version, the version that simmers underneath, is what's driving the whole crisis I'm about to walk you through. Because the loneliness epidemic is undeniable. Men are not imagining the pain. Women are not imagining the danger. And if we only defend one side, we'll never understand why both sides are losing. Over the last 3 episodes, we tracked how the dating market broke, who got stranded inside it, and where the pain went. Incels, MGTOW, passport bros. Today, I go underneath all of it because those two comments, his and hers, are reaching for the same thing without knowing it. So today, feminism, divorce, and the whole support system that quietly vanish around both of them. Not to blame, to be honest, and to offer an avenue for some self-reflection. The usual explanation is simple. Men are lonely because men are emotionally broken. They don't have friends because they don't know how to be vulnerable. They can't find partners because they refuse to do the inner work. Toxic masculinity is the disease. Therapy is the cure. I've said this across this series. Men should grow emotionally. Vulnerability is strength. Therapy changes lives. All true. But that story skips the structural causes, the measurable ways the system disadvantages men. And it skips the part where some genuinely good ideas tore down the old thing without ever building the replacement. If we're going to be honest about loneliness, and that's what this channel promised, we name every cause. The ones that make progressives uncomfortable, the ones that make conservatives uncomfortable. All of them, no team picking. Let's start with the hardest topic, feminism. Before anything else, feminism achieved things that were necessary and empowering. The right to vote, to own property, to work, to control her own body, to exist as a legal equal. And let me be straight about where I stand because you'll feel it anyway. I am not on a team here. I am a Filipina. I didn't grow up inside the Western culture war, so some of it I see more clearly from the outside and some of it I just don't share. I don't think we should reverse any of those wins by feminism, not because every consequence of them has been good. I don't believe that. But because they've taken root and turning back time isn't really realistic. What I do believe is this: freedom without a new agreement between men and women was always going to cost something. And I think it's worth saying out loud that some of that cost has landed on women themselves. But here's the part that gets overlooked. That older arrangement looked unequal to modern eyes, but that's not how every culture saw it. Well, it's not how mine sees it. Ang ama ay ang haligi ng tahanan at ang ina ay ang ilaw ng tahanan. The father is the pillar of the home. The mother is its light. Two different jobs, neither worth more than the other. Take either one away and the home crumbles or loses its sparkle. It's not a hierarchy. It's a partnership with clear roles. Everyone knew where they stood. Everyone knows they play an important part and they strive to play it well. Whereas somewhere in the West, around 60 or so years ago, it changed. Women got something they should have had all along: education, their own money, the freedom to leave. The education, the income, the legal equality, good, necessary, and I stand by every bit of it. The freedom to leave, Well, I stand by that too, but with one honest caveat. There's a big difference between leaving a marriage that is truly broken by abuse, betrayal, and real danger, and treating a vow like a subscription you can just cancel the morning you wake up bored and unhappy. That one feels so wrong. For better or for worse was supposed to mean something. And when leaving becomes the default instead of the last resort, the people who pay the most aren't the adults, it's the kids, and often a few years later, it's the woman herself. But let me say this too. The home didn't recognize itself to match the new freedom. Even now, many women who out earn their partners still carry more of the work inside the house. So some women look at marriage today and they don't see security anymore. They see a second shift. But let me complicate that because I think second shift is only half the picture. Where I come from, running a home and raising good kids was never servitude. It is never servitude. It is a source of pride and meaning, and for many, it is the deepest one. Somewhere along the way, parts of the West reframed that work as a cage and a desk as a freedom. I am not convinced trading an apron for a cubicle is the liberation it was sold as, really. That's my view, and I'll own it. But I'm not here to hand you my opinion and call it the truth. I'm here to ask the harder question. Where did the system actually go wrong? What did each side contribute? And is there a way out that doesn't require anyone to lose? And this is exactly where the two sides stop hearing each other. He hears, women don't need men anymore. She's actually saying, I don't want to carry two jobs. Well, those are not the same sentence. Now, look at the other side of that deal. Women were handed a new script. Be independent, earn, don't stay out of fear. Whereas most men got something else. A warning label. Don't be toxic, don't dominate, don't make her uncomfortable. Okay, fair enough, but then what? Well, I don't know about you, but it looks to me like one script lifted one person up and the other just removed the wrong for someone else. So let me answer the question many don't ask. What should a good man actually become? He still provides, protects, and leads, but not through control, through responsibility, stability instead of fear, someone safe to build a life with. He needs a purpose bigger than himself. That's not the manosphere's version of a man, the one who leads by control and treats a woman as a trophy to collect. And it's not the watered down version either. It's the one who leads by responsibility, is safe to build a life with. It's the one that actually works. And here's a point both sides skip. A wide open market where hookups prevail and commitment is optional rewards a small number of men at the very top, the top 10%, like we discussed in episode 2, the ones with the most options and the least reason to settle down. Everyone else, most men and a lot of women, competes for scraps in a game almost nobody wins. So when people ask who got hurt the most once intimacy became a marketplace, I don't think the honest answer is only men. Now let's get specific because there are measurable ways the system disadvantages men that the mainstream conversation won't discuss, starting with divorce and custody. In the US, about 80% of one-parent family groups with children under 18 are maintained by mothers, and women initiate roughly 70% of heterosexual divorces. But read that second number carefully because the same research that found it also found the why. Women don't leave more often because they're colder. They leave more often because more often than not, they're the one the marriage stopped working for because they don't want to work a second shift at home after already working a full-time job somewhere else. The financial hit of divorce is real on both sides, but what a man loses often goes past money. He loses daily access to his kids. He loses the entire structure his emotional life was built around. But here's the data I think everyone needs to ponder. In 2025, the journal Psychological Bulletin published a systematic review. 75 peer-reviewed studies across 30 countries covering more than 106 million men. This isn't a Reddit thread. This is peer-reviewed science. Divorced men are about 2.8 times more likely to die by suicide than married men. Separated men, the acute phase right after it ends, about 4.8 times. And for separated men under 35, about 8.6 times higher. And 1 in 5 adult suicides in the United States happens in the context of intimate partner problems. A breakup, a separation, a divorce. I'm going to let those numbers breathe for a moment because they matter. If any part of this episode is hitting you personally, please reach out to these numbers. It's also pinned in the comments section below. You don't have to be in a crisis to call. Why are men so much more vulnerable to this? Pew found that about 3/4 of partnered adults would turn to their spouse for emotional support, men and women equally. The difference is the backup. Women are more likely to also lean on friends, a mother, or other family member. Men often have no one else. About 20% of men have zero close friends. So when a man's marriage ends, he doesn't just lose a partner, he loses his entire emotional infrastructure. And yes, for the average decent man who was never the problem, the fallout from Me Too added a layer of fear to a dating process that was already punishing. Now, here's where I have to be precise because everything I just said is true and it still isn't the whole story. The divorce system does disadvantage men in specific ways. The suicide data is heartbreaking. The messaging did leave men without a new script. All true. And women didn't build this alone or out of malice. Many were responding to real history, bad marriages they couldn't leave, money they couldn't control, generations told to endure. When leaving finally became possible, of course they took it. And here's the uncomfortable flip side because honesty has to cut both ways. To be clear, this is not all women. Good women aren't doing this, but there's a loud number online who treat walking out of their marriage like a nice Sunday stroll in the park and something to brag about. The self-confessions with no hints of remorse on social media where they casually say, I left him because I just wasn't happy anymore, or everything in my marriage was perfect. He's a good man, he's a very responsible father, a good provider, but I was so bored, so I messaged his guy friend and one thing led to another. I cheated on my husband and now we're getting divorced. And all that filmed, posted, and applauded by other women in the comment section. No mention of the vow she took or concern for the kids. And I'm naming that behavior on purpose, not women, the behavior, because it's one of the exact things men see online that make them run away to the opposite direction. We can't close a divide if we're too polite to name them. When leaving for any reason becomes a flex online, commitment starts to look optional for everyone. And optional commitment is its own kind of loneliness. You just don't feel it until much later. The problem was never that women wanted freedom. The problem is that nobody rebuilt the bridge after the old one came down. And here's the mirror I think both sides need to see because it's the same wound from two directions. A lot of men built their entire emotional world around one woman. She was the confidant, the company, the family access, the one safe place, sometimes the only close relationship he had. And a lot of women felt expected to become exactly that, one man's entire world. Now, not every woman feels that way. Some are pulled in the opposite direction entirely by a culture that treats your own happiness as the only thing you owe anyone, and quietly measures your life against everyone else's highlight reel. Status, envy, fear of missing out. The same status competition we keep circling back to, just wearing a different face. So you get both at once. Some people are crushed by being someone's entire world. Others thought that committing to one person is settling. Different symptoms, same missing village underneath. Here's the twist on the first one. He experiences that closeness as intimacy. She experiences that closeness as labor. For him, she's the one place he can finally exhale. For her, being his only place to exhale starts to feel like a second full-time job. Then the relationship breaks and both of them walk away, certain that the other person failed the deal. But underneath both of them, something bigger had actually disappeared. The village. Like Esther Perel put it, we expect one person to give us what once an entire village used to provide, and we live twice as long. There's a framework I keep coming back to from Professor Jiang that explains how we got here without turning it into a blame game. Societies move through stages. In survival societies, you pair off or you starve. Everyone partners. In growth societies, think the Philippines right now, you pair off to climb. But in rich, high-tech societies, where the West is now, survival is handled. So the question quietly changes from, can I build a family, to, does this person raise my standing? And once that's the question, ordinary partnership starts to look like a downgrade. Because most people don't elevate your status. They just match it. And matching isn't enough in a status game. That's the engine. Wealth and technology made the village optional. The friends, the neighbors, the people who used to absorb some of the weight. And the status game turned the partner into a ranking instead of a refuge. So we tore down the village, handed all of its jobs to just one person, then called it love. Now, if you're a man who has experienced any piece of this, I see you. Your pain is not imagined. It's not small. And I'm still going to say this anyway. If your answer to that pain is to hate women, you haven't really escaped the broken market. You just gave it your personality. Acknowledging a man's pain is not anti-woman. Acknowledging a woman's fear is not anti-man. The moment you can't hold both, you've stopped telling the truth. And I stand by that because I stand for both men and women finding a clear path to each other again. And here's where it spills past dating, because the two sides aren't just lonely. They're drifting into two different worlds. Their politics are splitting too. Young women moving one way, young men another, faster than any generation before them. That ideological divide is big enough that it earns its own deep dive in season 3. Today, I just need you to see the shape of it. Same cities, different planets. Some women are stepping back from men entirely. Some men are doing the same from the other side, retreating into rooms where everyone agrees the other half of the human race is the enemy. And here's what I keep noticing. Women spend 50, 60 years publicly asking what a woman could be now. Out loud, together, messy, and they got results. Men, on the other hand, mostly got a correction. Don't dominate, don't be toxic. Fine. But nobody handed them the other half, what a good man should build, protect, become. So maybe the real men's revolution isn't men against women, and it is definitely not replacing women with machines. Maybe it's men deciding out loud what masculinity is for now. Redefine it with the times. Responsibility without control, strength without cruelty. Leadership that carries weight instead of demanding obedience. Working actively on a purpose bigger than himself. And if I were a man, here's where I'd start. And this is my opinion. Stop feeding the machine that's starving you, the hookup culture and the validation economy. Take that energy and pour it into something real and meaningful. Work that matters. Friends who'd show up at 3 in the morning, no matter what. A community, a craft. Get clear on the kind of person worth letting into your life. Set standards, take control, and stop auditioning for everyone else's life, including a woman's life, even if you like her so much. But if you're not reciprocated, just stop, okay? Rebuild that village. Because when good men stop chasing the market's validation and approval and start building lives worth joining, the whole incentive structure starts to bend. Not because anyone got lectured into it, but because the game finally changed on your own terms. That conversation is far bigger than this episode. We are going to have it in another season. Now, before anyone says I'm declaring the West doomed, I'm not. I don't believe that. There are millions of men and women who still want partnership, family, real connection. They haven't been radicalized. They haven't given up. They're just lost in a market that stopped working for them. And not every feminist is an anti-man. Not every empowered woman is hostile to partnership. Not every message to boys was destructive. I'm talking about the edges, the places where a movement hardened into identity. Most people live in the middle, wanting what they always wanted: to be seen, to be chosen, to build something real. And here's what gives me hope. The proof that this game can change isn't buried in some study. It's right here. Here at home, family still means something. Partnership still carries weight. And though I can see some status games playing out at a micro level, partnership is still the end game and primary incentive for relationships. And more importantly, the village did fully disappear. Our strong sense of community here is our moat. But, and hear me out, because this part is for both sides. The Philippines is not a repair shop for a broken man. If a man brings his bitterness here, his contempt here, his bad habits here, he can damage the very thing that still works here. Like I mentioned in episode 3, you don't escape the broken market by changing countries. If the habits don't change, you just export them. And remember that Filipina from the very beginning, the one who said that Western men think they can dictate the rules because they have the money? She didn't say that out of nowhere. Somewhere, she most likely met a man who brought the broken market with him. That wasn't an entitlement. It was a scar. In my own small way, I want to stop that comment from becoming true. That is one reason why this channel exists. And the other reason? It's him. I don't want him to come to my country, make the same mistakes, and end up more broken than when he arrived. And here's what I keep coming back to. Both men and women built this. Again, not on purpose and not out of malice. Women rationally chose independence. Men rationally pulled back from rejection. The course rationally applied rules that produce devastating results. The apps are rationally optimized to keep us swiping. Every single choice made sense on its own, but together, they produce a world where we're more connected to our phones and more disconnected from each other than at any point in human history. So here's the thing. The tragedy isn't that people stopped wanting love. The tragedy is that we tore down the village, handed every one of its jobs to one exhausted person, and then blamed each other when they buckled under the weight. Two people were never meant to be each other's entire world. They were meant to be each other's most favorite part of a much bigger one. In episode 5, and this is where the series turns, we examine the validation economy where ordinary men in huge numbers keep paying into the exact market that's grinding them down. And what happens if those same habits are exported here? At sa mga Pinay kong kapatid, what's coming next is for you too, because protecting what still works here means understanding the disease before it arrives, not after. Tell me in the comments, do you think the Western dating market can still recover, or has the divide become permanent? I'm not asking to be provocative. I'm asking because your answer shapes what comes next. If this series feels like holding up a mirror to your thoughts, subscribe, hit the bell so the next one finds you. And if someone you know needs to hear this, send it to them. The conversation is just getting started. This has been Joe, and have a good one. Bye. That they should have, maybe not that, right? Session 4, Patty A, take for action. So ridiculous. Okay, calm down. Okay, let's see. Let's start with the hardest topic,